Hello and welcome to the second of our live shows here on the Defiant. And why are we going live? Well, we are changing up the way we do things here at the studio. We're going to be moving into a very exciting new space using virtual production. What happened there, Alp?
I was monitoring our live stream, so I just turned that.
Something happened. Something happened. Well, let's try that again, shall we? Why are we changing what we're doing? Well, we're moving into virtual production this year, and we're also doing a lot more live stuff, so we can do more in pre-production and less in post-production. It's boring. Why are you here today? Well, we are doing a tutorial on Nftx. And what is Nftx? Well, it's a protocol for allowing you to extract liquidity from NFTs, and it does it in a myriad of different ways, but it's essentially the marriage of DeFi and NFTs. And if you think that NFTs are just an asset class, then I think you're seriously misunderstanding or misallocating the potential of the space here. If we think about art, yes, there is an asset class here, but beyond all of that, there's a gateway to DeFi, there's a gateway to the metaverse, there's a gateway to a bunch of different things. But in order for that to function, we need to have liquidity mechanisms in place. NFTX does exactly that. I've been looking at Treasure, which is one of the loot derivatives that grew up, and they're doing some really, really interesting things. AGLD was listed on Coinbase today. Treasure is another currency or an internal currency for the metaverse, which is promising to allow different PFP projects to exist under the same kind of universal currency. It's very early days, but we're starting to see some very interesting farming mechanics happen here. You can stake your N, you can stake loot, you can stake AGLD, but you can also take the treasure tokens themselves, unravel the different components of them, and stake them variously for different rewards. Some really exciting stuff. I don't want to go too deep into Treasure, but it's just another example of how NFTs are starting to really combine with DeFi and what DeFi is good at in terms of composability and really leveraging the most out of your assets in some really fascinating ways. And I think before too long, we'll just have to accept that NFTs are DeFi, DeFi are NFTs. It's kind of the same world and the same set of tools that we'll be using to extract value from them. So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at basically the entire Nftx platform with the goal of understanding where they're going, what the intention is with the new version of the platform, and then looking into how you can buy there, how you can sell, how you can stake, how you can create your own vault on there, and then look at the coins as well. And so all of that is coming up. But first, a quick message from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is Polymarket, the world's leading information markets platform where you can trade on the most pressing global questions, all on the blockchain. Choose from a variety of markets. Will Cardano support smart contracts by October? Will the US have more than 200,000 COVID cases before 2022? Will Trump run for president again? And with over $140 million traded on the platform, Polymarket is the go-to place to settle the biggest debates of the day. Want tomorrow's news today? Use Polymarket to see real-time data on what the market thinks will happen. No fake news, no pundits without skin in the game. Think you know more than the market? Trade on your beliefs and earn a return if you are right. And for a limited time, sign up with the referral code TUTORIALS to get up to $100 reimbursed on your first day of trading. Go to the description and click on the link to get started, polymarket.co/tutorials. That's the end of the sponsors messages. We are back in the game with our look at Nftx, a platform for buying and selling NFTs instantly. Now, this is a really fascinating protocol. They released the new version of this on the 15th of September. There was a beautiful Medium article which explains exactly what's going on here. So I dug into this and I had a look at what they're kind of saying with this new version. So this is their brand new Nftx Marketplace, the world's most liquid decentralized NFT marketplace powered by the Nftx protocol. And one of the big highlights here is that whereas in previous releases, you had to make a lot of different transactions to buy or sell an NFT, now they've managed to lower that to just one transaction. So basically what happens is you can mint your NFT into a token as part of a vault, and that token represents ownership of that NFT. And there was always 100 tokens that represented that NFT. And in order to buy an NFT, you had to go and acquire those tokens, and then you had to sell those tokens. And that was quite a few steps. And as we know, gas is expensive, and that ended up being a very expensive thing. But thanks to the power of Zapper, they've managed to reduce that down to just one transaction. Now, of course, you have to approve the token as you do with everything else in DeFi. But once you've done that, it's much simpler to just buy and sell. So now, instead of this looking like a DeFi action where you supply, you go to an exchange like SushiSwap and buy a token, now it's just, you've just got very familiar buy and sell options, and all the clever stuff happens under the hood thanks to Zap. The other thing they managed to do is you can actually buy multiple NFTs, or you can sell multiple NFTs at the same time. That is much, much, much harder than you might think. And what's going on under the hood again, they're using the tokens as a liquidity mechanism to take advantage of automated market makers like Sushi to power the ability to sell one for the other at a reasonable market price. Again, this all sounds so simple, but if you're talking about decentralized protocols and everything that goes with it, this stuff is difficult. This stuff has friction, and NFTX has managed to make it a lot simpler. So if we were to take a look at how that actually looks, on the new Nftx page, you have a lovely collage of the different protocols, of different projects that you can buy on here, and lots of familiar ones here. We've got Punks, we've got Penelopes, Hashmas, etc., etc., etc. And if you were, for instance, to want to buy a cool cat, now you could, of course, go to OpenSea and look for a good deal on OpenSea. You can still do that. But if you wanted to go and look for a floor cool cat, here's a bunch of them. There's quite a lot of them here. And there is a buy now button. So you pick the one you want, click buy now. Now, I don't actually have enough ETH to buy a cool cat, because a cool cat is quite expensive these days. Damn it. But I could, if I did have enough ETH, purchase it directly here. We'll go into what the prices look like in a little bit. But that is a lot more simple than it used to be. So in the old days, you had these mint and redeem functions. You can still use those. So I don't actually have any cool cats at the moment, but you would have to mint your cool cat for tokens, and then there would be a little fee. So to redeem tokens for a cool cat, you need 100 of them. But when you mint them, you only get 95. So there's like this 5% fee that you would pay to Nftx for the privilege. That's no longer the case. And what they're looking to do is make the whole Zap process, make it more favorable for people, as we'll look at in the staking section of this, for people to actually get a good deal on the NFT that they want. So looking at that Medium post again, we have the one-click buying and selling with Zaps. There's something new in the coins page, but what I was really intrigued by was what's coming next. So the product team is now fully focused on delivering additional features, and those features will be multi-chain support. So imagine all of this functionality, but then plugged into everything that's being built on Solana, Polygon. Obviously, it's not a stretch to feel that there's going to be a big NFT ecosystem on Polkadot, Kusama, and probably all the different parachains there as well, as NFTs start to grow in stature. Then, there's, think of a layer one like Phantom at the moment with Rarity. But all of these things, if they can plug into one giant cross-chain liquidity mechanism, that's going to be good for everybody. There's metadata filtering for greater searchability within collections. Yes, that's like discoverability is one of the biggest problems of OpenSea. There's just too much to take in. Single-sided staking. We'll get into that again on the staking thing, but staking or providing liquidity generally means providing one token and an equal amount of ETH on the other side. And that is always quite painful, because you have to match one thing with another, and that means you're kind of basically putting in double what you have, and that's not always so simple. Single-sided staking, you just put in one. And then they're also going to be doing a launch platform for creators. Now, there are a ton of launch platforms coming out. Most people will choose the launch platform that offers a great shopfront experience, or it might offer a great minting experience, or they might go where a lot of other interesting creators are. With Nftx, you're going to be going where the liquidity is, and that could be extremely enticing for people. What's very clear from reading this is that these guys see that OpenSea is potentially vulnerable, and they feel that they can actually take them on by offering not the same experience as OpenSea, but a very different experience that offers the ability for people to trade in and out of NFTs very quickly. And essentially what you're looking at here is NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're non-fungible. One is not the same as another. And that makes them extremely difficult to price. That makes it extremely difficult to create liquidity. NFTX is simply fungibilizing NFTs. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But what it's certainly doing, it's democratizing access to NFTs. So for instance, if you wanted to gain exposure to punks, for instance, but of course you can't afford a single punk, then there are different ways to do it, fractionalized pieces of punks. But a punks token as part of the punks vault gives you broader access to the punks system as a whole. And if you do really well and you're a great trader and over time you collect enough punks tokens to actually buy a punk, then more power to you. But it's just a different way of gaining access. We will again look at the way that certain projects, Penelopes, for instance, are using NFTX to really bootstrap their liquidity and their project, and allowing people who own the tokens but not necessarily the NFTs to still participate in that ecosystem as well, which is really fascinating. So that is essentially the overview of why NFTX was worthy of doing a live show all about it. It is this marriage of NFTs and DeFi in a way that is potent and exciting, and it's starting to get somewhere good. So let's go through the different tabs and have a look at exactly how this all works. So I'm going to take the example of cryptodes at the moment because it's kind of on my mind, but it's also something we've covered on the NFT show. So normally what I would do is I would go to Rarity Tools and I would look at cryptodes and I would look at the range of these things. Now, one of the biggest problems you have when you look at a collection this size, now it's not that big, but it's 7,000 assets, 7,000 assets. Mentally, we think of this collection as one piece, but of course it is not. A PFP collection can generally be segmented into 3 pieces, really. There's the top 5%, where the rarest ones are, and those occupy a similar kind of existence to art blocks, for instance, where they're highly sought after, the attributes are highly valuable, and you pay a premium for those rare, desirable attributes. But then there's the bottom end, which is the floor, and all of those assets in the bottom end tend to kind of just be valued the same. It's kind of where the liquidity sits. It's where you can jump in and out. And if a project is doing well and you want to gain exposure to it without having to pay a premium for a rare item, then that's where you sit. But then you have this thick middle part where nobody really knows how to price it. Now, there might be a small premium for a certain rare item, and you might be able to trade up and flip, but it's very difficult to understand where the value proposition sits in there. And that's the same for all of these assets. You encounter this particularly with Meebits, because Meebits has a 20,000 supply. Akira will also have a 20,000 supply. So understanding the value through the middle of these PFPs is extremely difficult. So when we think of cryptodes, mentally we think of just one asset class, one family, and then a price attached to it. So we can look at IC Tools. And cryptodes, I haven't got the premium version of IC Tools, but cryptodes is clearly doing well. The floor price is rising, and this is on a nice trajectory. And if we look on the activity on OpenSea, same kind of thing. People are paying a good amount for cryptodes. So if we go into Nftx, here is the cryptodes pool, and there's a bunch of these cryptodes in here. So what has happened here is these cryptodes represent the floor. All of these are interchangeable one for another. There is exactly no difference between them in any way, shape, or form. And that's deliberate. On OpenSea, you could make a difference between these based on, well, on anything really. On OpenSea, you set your own price. So you could say, well, this particular toad with his grill is valuable, should be valuable, but then maybe this one is more valuable. How do you know? There is no way to put a price on that. So with Nftx, we simply set the floor. And if you buy the Toads token, for instance, on SushiSwap, then you'd be able to redeem it for one of these cryptodes. And one of the kind of interesting, powerful strategies that you can do with Nftx is you could say, for instance, if we looked at toad 3835 here, and we went on to Rarity Tools, and we typed in 3835, it would give us a ranking for this toad, 6135. Now, we could also have a look in at 4543, for instance, and just type that in, 4543, and now we see that it's slightly rarer. So you could arbitrage rarity within the pool, because these are all hot swappable one for another. And you could instantly swap out one of these toads for another. So let's say you had a toad in your wallet, it was a floor toad, and you saw one of these ones and you checked the rarity and you realize that someone had put a toad that was rarer than, might be expected in this pool. You could go and directly swap it one for one with a toad in this pool, and it's as simple as that. So that's kind of an interesting way to use this pool of toads in here. You can also just buy now. As we looked at before, I could just straight up buy a toad. So if I selected this toad that I like, I could buy it. Now I can't buy it because I've got 2 ETH in my wallet. I wish I did, but it would be as simple as that. Let's say, for instance, you wanted to sell. So I have 4 toads in my wallet. Thank you. I love my toads. I don't actually want to sell them, but if I did, I would be able to sell this toad by approving the token and then selling now. And it's as simple as that. So I'm just directly selling into some tokens and I get ETH back. So what's going on under the hood there is I'm selling for toads tokens, and those toads tokens are created when people put NFTs into the vault. So if I were to sell a toad into this vault, it would be creating tokens, and then those tokens would be sold on SushiSwap for ETH, and then I get the ETH. Now, what you will notice is that there is a spread. So the buy price is 2 ETH, but the sell price is 1.796 ETH, which is a big difference. Now, I talked to the guys about this, and basically it's to do with the liquidity pools and the fact that these aren't very liquid at the moment. So what they explained to me was that there are 2 liquidity pools. In fact, there is a sushi pool, which is against WETH, I believe. Yep. And then there's a pool against the Nftx token itself, because Nftx has its own governance token. And if you split the order between these 2, that you can do with 1 inch, for instance, I believe, then you would get a better deal. But the way it works under the hood here with Zap is that the Sushi sends the order directly to the best pool it can find, and then does the complete order through that pool, which means generally it'll be through the Sushi WETH pool, and the liquidity just isn't there to provide a good price. That's just about the depth of the liquidity pool itself. You can actually go onto the coins page and check out the liquidity there, the total value locked. But it's one of the problems with the platform at the moment, this massive spread, and it's why you need to be a little bit careful when you are trading on there, just to make sure that you are actually paying a decent price. So the spread, and the spread gets really bad. If you look at the Punks pool, for instance, the spread is, well, the buy price is 100 ETH, and the sell price is 79.41, which is a difference of 20 ETH, which is, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. So the one way to get around that would be to acquire the tokens yourself on Sushi. So if we click on the SushiSwap icon, you can see there's a SushiSwap pool, and you could go and quietly acquire the Sushi tokens, the Punk tokens on Sushi, over a period of time, and dollar cost average into the right price for you. And that obviously means you're not just buying a Punk straight away, but it's a little bit messy. So that's one of the things that there's a kind of a downside to this mechanism at the moment. It will improve as more users come onto the platform and more projects become more sophisticated at using it. So we are early, put it that way. So it's probably worth doing a bit of homework. For instance, going and checking what the correct floor price for an asset would be, depending on its attributes, for instance, and just doing your homework through Rarity Tools, doing your homework through, for instance, WGMI. So on WGMI, I can also see how much I pay for something, what my best offer is, all these kind of things. while I'm talking about best offers, if I look at that toad that I was just on, for instance, you can see like what a lot of people do is, well, they accept the bids that come in. So bots will bid on your NFT. For instance, I've got a 1.34 ETH bid here. What I love about the new OpenSea is that they've got an offer strength column here, which tells you that it's 27.2% below the floor. It's terrible. Like bots will lowball you deliberately because they know that people need liquidity. And what a lot of people do, they go, yeah, sure, 1.34 ETH sounds great. If I were to sell this toad on, for instance, let's look for the Toad's Vault on Nftx. And I got to sell, then I get 1.796. So comparatively speaking, that's a better deal. And I will be able to get that 1.76 immediately. Now, not every NFT that you're in has a liquidity pool, but clearly accepting the bot bid is the wrong move here, and going and selling on Nftx is the right move if you need the liquidity. I would still argue that for this particular asset, for this particular toad, I ought to be looking for more like 2.15 ETH for a Rainbow Mohawk. And I actually tend to think that Rainbow Mohawk itself is quite a desirable attribute, but that's something you need to get into in terms of just doing your homework on the collection itself. So that's buying and selling. Let's look at the questions. Are there any questions? Abgazimov.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, yeah, we can hear you
there
now.
There we go. Okay, so there was a question, and
yes,
they're asking, so can we buy on Nftx and then sell it on OpenSea for a profit?
So yes, you can. Of course you can. But the idea of Nftx is it sets a price for the assets, which means that if you are arbitraging and you see that, for instance, assets on OpenSea are overpriced, you can arbitrage that. And similarly, if assets on OpenSea are underpriced, you can arbitrage that as well. It's entirely up to you what you do. But it's, again, about doing your homework. It's about using the various tools at your disposal to understand, firstly, the momentum of the market. So clearly with toads, we can see the momentum of the market it's bullish, right? It may come down again, but generally you would look at this and think, yes, people want the toads, so there's a good opportunity here. But as I've just shown in that example, what you're trying to beat is the bots, because the bots will lowball you because they think you don't know what's going on. They think you're not sophisticated enough to understand that you have other options. Here with Nftx, you have another option. And the way that the market is designed is it's designed to set a stable floor. It's using an AMM and tokens to establish a floor price through normal market mechanisms, which OpenSea doesn't do, by the way, because it operates entirely peer-to-peer with people setting their own prices on the market, which is weird, but that's the way it works. And that is pure, undiluted, just market dynamics, and that's awesome. But it's also kind of very difficult to rationalize. So, my advice would be look at the bot bid, check against the vault in Nftx, and see if you can get a better deal. Because here, quite clearly, I could get a 0.4 ETH better deal, and 0.4 ETH is somewhere around $1,400. That's not to be sniffed at, not at all. So again, it's about just making sure you do your homework on the assets in question. Now, what do you do if you don't have a pool? So if there's no pool, you can create one. I'm going to come back to staking in a bit. For instance, there is a new kind of hot NFT project called World of High Tops. These are limited edition high top sneakers that you can't mint, by the way, but these took an NFT that you owned, wrapped it around a pair of sneakers, and people kind of enjoyed these, I think. 10 KTF is what it's called. Look at them, the market price. It's kind of dipping a little bit, but it had a little bit of a run up. People want these. If we wanted to sell these on an FTX, we would go and have a look for, I think, what are they, high tops? And there's no vault. So we can create one. And the way we would do that is you take the NFT asset address. I've already got this loaded up. We can take that contract ID, plug it into, I've got too many too many windows open. I can plug that in here, give it a name. So we would call these NFT. Sorry, what is the collection called? World of High Tops. Something like that. Let's call it World of High Tops. Like that. And then I would give it a vault symbol. So I don't know, HTOP, something like that. Then we can review that. And it gives you a little warning message. Please be aware that bootstrapping a successful vault requires a minimum of 3 transactions and at least 10 NFTs and ETH equal to their value deposited in Sushi. For more information, please visit our Discord. So yes, it's not as simple as me just creating this thing. I also need to have a few assets to put in there and some ETH as well. And depending on the assets you're putting in, that might be quite a lot of ETH. But if you're a project that has just had a very successful launch, a PFP project, and God knows how many of those we've got at the moment, and you've raised a ton of ETH, but you're also sitting on the ability to buy the floor on your particular project, then you can do this. And there is a project that has done this recently that Nftx themselves flagged as having done it really, really well. And the project in question was, if we can load it up, it's the Penelope's Country Club. Let's take a look at these. And here they are. The Penelope's is actually quite an interesting project. Not a fan of the art myself, but that's by the by. They have a committed community. Jimmy himself owns the number 2 per. I know Pranksy had a bunch of these. They have some interesting mechanisms about returning value to owners, but what Nftx themselves said was that there had been a textbook example of how new NFT projects should be rolling out their roadmap and including liquidity pools as part of their early and long-term plans. What I like about Nftx at the moment is that they give you quick and easy access to the June analytics for your particular project that you're looking at. So you can get a good overview of kind of what's going on and vault token holders and all this kind of thing directly from the Nftx dashboard. That's pretty helpful. Obviously, you have to be a bit of a nerd to be reading all this stuff, but in their roundup, they do cite these figures and show how, let me get this right. So this is what they did. They seeded the vault with 250 NFTs and then paired that with 25 ETH to create a stable liquidity pool, and the price has never deviated below the initial seed price. So anyone who was putting an NFT into that vault has seen value in return. Anybody who was buying the tokens has seen value in return, and it's been pretty organic growth. And the bit that I liked here was that for any airdrops which Penelope's team are doing in the future, they'll also be considering users that own whole per tokens to become eligible in the same way as if you owned the NFT itself. Now, I might have said a boo-boo here when I said that you needed to have 100 tokens of an asset in order to redeem them for the actual NFT itself. It may be that you need 100 pieces of the token. I'll have to check back in on that. But essentially, like I said, when you mint an NFT into the vault, it creates V tokens. Those are vault tokens that represent the share of an NFT. And if you get 100 of those or 100 pieces of those, then you can redeem them for an NFT in the pool. We can look at the coins here on offer. Various different ones. They give you a quick and easy access to go to the sushi pool to buy or trade these. But you can also get a quick rundown of how much value is locked into those pools. And that's obviously a very important metric because if we scroll all the way down, for instance, Nice Drips has $690 of TVL. Does that mean it's going to be easy to swap in that pool? No. You're going to be hit by monster slippage, monstrous, which is no good for anyone, and that's not what you want. So, as always, the liquidity will tend to cluster around the projects where, well, there's the most demand, there's the most excitement, there's the most volume, because, well, why wouldn't it? So that brings us on to staking. Staking is basically where you take an SLP, your liquidity provider token, and you can stake it. But you can also, well, you know the way on Uniswap, if you set up a pair, for instance, you add liquidity to an ETH USDC pair. what comes back to you is a token that represents your liquidity share. And then, the DeFi farming thing is you take that token and you stake it, and you can get more rewards in the flavor of, sushi or whatever protocol you're using at the time. Same thing here with Nftx. You can stake your liquidity tokens. So I could stake whatever this is, 89 SA. Let's look at a different one. I could stake in the animators pool. I would have to put my liquidity tokens in here. There are rewards that you can earn for doing so, and those rewards will be paid out in the token that you have supplied. So you will be paid out in anime tokens if you're in the anime ETH pool, or in Avastar tokens if you're in the Avastar ETH pool. But what I like about this is that you don't have to necessarily stake SLP. You can stake the NFT itself. And there's a reason why you might want to do that. Let's hope the page loads up. There we go. There we go. So there's 6 Animeta NFTs in my wallet. So I could pick one of these and I could stake it. And what that will do is it will allow me to stake directly into the SLP pool. And the way it would do that is it would take this Animeta NFT, it would convert it into Animeta tokens, and then it would allow me to supply those using Zaps. But at the same time, I would also have to supply the correct amount of ETH in order to balance the pool. But this is the cool bit. There's this other thing here on the side here, anime coming soon. So in the near future, I will be able to simply supply that NFT directly into the pool and start becoming a liquidity provider on that anime ETH side and start earning rewards directly via this Animeta. Now, I'm kind of a fan of Animetas, and the ones that I've kind of carefully and cautiously picked up over the course of the last 2 months, they're not ones that I want to put into the liquidity pool. But that's not what you would be doing anyway. So if you wanted to play this side of the market, what you would do is you would go to the Animeta's rarity tools page, then change this from rarity but to price, low to high. And then basically what you're looking for is the cheapest, worst Animetas you can find. Like literally the rock bottom ones that you can pick up for the cheapest price possible. So we're going to buy now, because you like an Animeta that's ranked 5376 is underpriced. Actually, if it's on the floor, it's underpriced. Someone's looking to sell it. But one that is priced on the floor and it's ranked 9496 in a collection that is how much is in the collection? 10,000. That is correctly priced. And you could pick that up for cheaps, and then you could supply it into the liquidity pool and start earning on top of that. So that's how you would play that side of the market. You don't want to be buying one that's kind of undervalued and underpriced, because you could make more off that just by selling it on OpenSea and finding the right buyer. And that's the thing, though. If you want to do that, you have to wait for the right buyer. And it takes time for those buyers to manifest themselves. And generally, the way that you get out of a position like that is the floor goes up rapidly because there is a stimulus or some kind of momentum behind the project, and then you can get out of the position. So that is how you might decide to use the liquidity pool. I wouldn't advise doing that with some of the rarer ones. It doesn't make any sense. But if you were to go and sweep the floor and then supply it as liquidity, that's a valid strategy. I would have to look into what the rewards themselves are worth. But like all of these things, you're farming, you're earning rewards on assets that you wouldn't otherwise be able to use. And if you can pick them up on a project that's been unfairly squashed or sold off, then there might be some gains there. Of course, like everything else, it's just a different way to add value to your portfolio, and it's a different way of leveraging DeFi and what DeFi can do for you. So that is basically kind of a massive overview of the Nftx platform. I don't by any means suggest that this is perfect. The insane spread between buy and sell troubles me, I'll be honest. When it's 20% like it is on punks, that's not good for anybody. But on smaller projects, and particularly newer projects where they're looking to bootstrap liquidity and invite people to get in and out, there's so many interesting tools here to do that. It is definitely worth checking Nftx against a bot bid that you might have if you are looking to get out of a position. A lot of people buy into projects and they overbuy. They buy like 10 when they only wanted 5, and they want to kind of, I'm not going to say dump, but they want to exit a position quickly. Nftx might be a place to do that, but only if a project has set it up properly. And that's kind of the overview of it, really. I can't imagine that it will be too long before we can see lending and things like that on NFTs. I actually had a look at drops loans today because someone actually mentioned it in the Nftx Discord. Here, they're promising that you will be able to borrow against DeFi and NFT tokens and use your NFTs for loans. You can turn your idle assets into active yield. This is all kind of interesting. What's specifically interesting about drops is that it's not peer-to-peer. There's actually a liquidity pool in the same way that Nftx has a liquidity pool, which will allow you to generate these lending positions. That's kind of interesting. So, Alp, let's go back to the questions. Anything else that people are asking?
This one's an interesting question. I don't think you can hear me. Actually, the microphone's not working. Or can you?
I can't hear Alp, but he's telling me that I am indeed incorrect. The model I was talking about, 100 tokens, is the NFT 20 model. So I've used NFT 20 before, and that's where I was getting confused. But yes, you need one whole token to redeem for one NFT, which is it's actually simpler, isn't it? Let's be honest. So get one whole punk token, yikes. But get one whole, I don't know, crypto toad, doable, definitely doable. And you can just gradually work your way up to that position. But I think what's interesting about this is that the tokens themselves allow you to gain exposure to a category rather than necessarily having to buy one particular NFT. And the funny thing about NFTs is that they are, at the same time, they're a class and a family, but within them, you can get really attached to these things, and they gain value for you that they wouldn't for other people. But they can also gain value just because of a certain trait, like gold fur, for instance, gaining in value. So there's just so many different entry points and attack vectors for this space. But having a liquidity pool or a liquidity mechanism to get in and out of floor level positions, and just a weapon to fight those bots with, because I'll be honest, probably the best game anywhere in the NFT space in the last 6 months was bots. Plain and simple. Bots, paper, stealing from paper hands and giving to the rich. That was probably one of the biggest and most exciting games. What other questions? Okay, what's stopping a whale from buying enough from Revolt to raise the floor price, selling back, rinse, and repeat? Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. It probably wouldn't make much sense for a whale to do that because the liquidity is so thin on these. I suspect it's probably it's going to work best for projects where they have a large number of assets, a chunk of which people are not that excited about, that they want people to be able to, get in and out of and provide liquidity that way. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense otherwise. I mean, let's not forget, when projects issue NFTs, they also get royalties. So it's in their interest for there to be trade, for people to be trading in and out of these things. So, whenever there's an activity or it changes hands, they get a cut of that. And on OpenSea, OpenSea also takes that cut every single time. I want to know how much money OpenSea has made. I really do. I'm sure somebody can work it out. Koala Bear says, I'm speaking too close to my mic. Well, that's how I roll, my friend. That's how I roll. Anything else? Any other questions? Al, you need to turn my mic down because I'm distorting. Problem is we can't hear very well on these headphones. They're wonderful, but the impedance is too much. Any other questions? No. Is there a multi-chain timeline? I don't know, to be honest with you. I suspect it's going to be quite difficult to do that. Multi-chain is getting easier for sure, but there's still going to be a ton of friction involved in that. But it's where we are going, and that's exciting. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who joined the stream. If you were watching the recording of this, I hope it was instructional. We will definitely do our best to put chapter markers on this thing so it's easier to navigate through it. I think NFTX has got a lot to offer, and I would love to see more projects like that in the future, giving people more NFT access. The last thing for me to say is, if this was of help to you, please give us a subscribe, drop us a like, all those kind of things. The more stuff we can give YouTube to chew on and spit out more recommendations for us, the better it is. So this was the second of our live shows on the Defiant. Tomorrow, we are covering bonds and how liquidity mechanisms can be used to bootstrap liquidity without farming, without mining. It's pretty wild stuff. And then on Friday, we're going to be doing a massive look at the metaverse, trying to peel apart what it actually is, some huge misconceptions about it, where we're going in the metaverse, what our big plans for that is, because it seems very clear now that NFTs, DeFi, and the metaverse are some kind of weird, crazy triangle that's going to be the future of everything we know. And most of it, I'm sure, will be built on Unreal Engine. So much to look forward to. That's coming up this week. I will see you. Peace out.